If you just all of a sudden punched me in the face, caught a double leg and drove me through the wall, I would be totally fine with it.
I think that's what it really comes down to. No matter what happens, I'm going to be okay, because you can't hit me with anything right now that I don't feel like I'm going to be able to survive.
95% of people who have been exercising for more than like a year, it's only about that mental side of it.
And just like you thinking about your car, when your car is running optimally, the process of getting to where you want to go is so much easier.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Good People, episode 11. Today, I sat down with Athan Schindler. He's the owner of Bastrop Fitness Project, which is the hub for all things health and wellness outside of Austin, Texas. Expect to learn how he went from a career in the military to a career in fitness, and what his 3 pillars for a meaningful life are: optimal health, deep connection, and self-actualization. In today's episode, we broke down what each one of those things means to him. If you're watching today's episode on YouTube, it would mean the world to us if you left a like, comment, and subscribed. And if you really wanted to, turn on post notifications so you never miss an episode. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to the show. Thank you for taking part in this immersive listening experience. A meaningful existence is a moving target that, no matter how close, will always be out of reach. We hope this message finds you with an outstretched hand. As we attempt to uncover complex truths, remember, life's toughest questions can be answered if we all just focus on one thing: being good people.
Well, Athan, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man, I'm very excited to have this conversation. We met at a work conference, and I feel like we connected with each other pretty well. Got to know each other a little bit, but I'm excited to have this conversation because I know I'm going to learn a whole bunch of stuff about you that I'm just curious about.
That's awesome. Yeah, I had I met you like almost immediately at that conference, and when you meet somebody and you just you just kind of really connect with them. I think we had that right off the bat. So we started chatting about this podcast, and here we are. We're ready to do it.
Dude, I've thought about that since. We had it was probably 5 seconds of just, we were blocking eyes, and I think we were both deciding, do we talk to each other?
Yeah.
And I was like, I've been looking at this guy long enough, I should say hello.
Yeah.
Introduce myself. And I was like, I'm so glad that we had that awkward interaction.
Me too, man. Yeah, it's weird at those conferences and stuff, but I appreciated you introducing yourself, and I think, this is going to create a relationship that'll probably live on for quite a while.
Cool. I've already thought about it. If I'm in the Austin, Texas area, I'm going to sleep on your couch.
Yes, dude, please come on over.
Cool. Well, dude, you got your hands in a lot of projects, many endeavors. Can you give us a brief overview of all the things that you're involved with?
Yeah, I'm actually in the process of trying to narrow it all down, but I do have a lot of things going on. But first and foremost, I consider myself a gym owner. I own a gym. That was kind of the catalyst for almost everything else I'm involved with now. And so with that, now I've opened a recovery spa. I've opened a cafe, which maybe doesn't sound very connected to a gym owner, but it's a cafe that's inside of my facility. I've owned a yoga studio, I'm kind of involved in all things health and wellness. I recently just got bought out of a local neighborhood grocery store that I was a partner in, and I just got bought out of that. So that's kind of helping me to narrow my focus down.
Cool. Why is the fitness and health space a passion of yours?
It was really, I guess sport has always been a part of my life. From a young kid, I grew up with a single mom, and, she kind of stuck me in sports as kind of like a method of daycare. Really, she just needed to put me somewhere while she was working. And so it's always just kind of been a part of my life. And but it really became like a passion, or I don't like the word passion. I like the word purpose. It became my purpose when I was in the military. I realized pretty quickly how important your physicality was in just success. I mean, forget survival, obviously, in a combat situation. That part's obvious. But just being a good leader, being a good person, performing mentally at your highest level, I realized I was able to do that when I was the most physically fit. And I wanted my guys to have that same experience. And so I learned how to help people with their fitness, really out of human performance.
That's something that I've talked to a lot of people in the fitness space just because that's what I'm involved with as well on the podcast already. And that's something that has been a constant with everybody that I've chatted with about that is like, I think most people who are not fitness people look at fitness people and think, oh, there's a big body image thing. It's about being physically fit. But 95% of people who have been exercising for more than like a year, it's only about that mental side of it, right? I
Right.
exercise because it just makes me feel better about myself. It makes me sharper mentally. I can give a little bit more focused work on the things that I want to work on creatively, etc. So that's cool that you also have that experience. And I would say that's probably a pretty universal thing when it comes to fitness in general.
Yeah, I think so. I think the way that I like to explain it to people is that I am not my body. I am something that lives inside of this body as a vehicle. I call it my meat suit. And just like you thinking about your car, when your car is running optimally, the process of getting to where you want to go is so much easier. You're not worrying about things breaking down and whatnot. And that's really how I think about it is I have purpose. I have something I want to do in my life. And I want this mechanism that I'm living in to be vibrating at the highest level.
I had a conversation with a client this morning whose son is involved with fitness, just started jujitsu, and she said that he's very in his body, which is very weird to me because it sounds like me and you are the same. I feel like I've lived the majority of my life in my head. Like
Mm.
I'm a very cerebral guy. I like to do intellectual, strategic things. Playing video games, I like strategy video games, things like that. And I catch myself all the time not being in my body because I'm like thinking about something. It's a lack of presence at times, but it stems from just me being a more cerebral person. And so that is interesting. I've never thought about it from that perspective, or I guess articulated in this way. That's one of the main reasons why I love fitness too, is because it pulls me. Like I was into rock climbing a lot my freshman year of college, um, at a rock climbing gym, and that was it. It was the time I realized, okay, this thing is so narrowed and focused that I have to only think about this one thing, and it puts me in my body. And I like how that feels because the majority of the time I'm not like that.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. It's that whatever hour to 2 hours that I might be, working out is, I'm completely present. I'm right there. I'm not thinking about anything else because, like you, I'm an overthinker. I'm an analytical person. Yeah, I can't think about anything else but that movement that I'm doing, or I might get hurt, or I'm not going to do it very well.
Yeah, exactly. Um, let's jump back to kind of the start of your career. I know you said military. We can talk as much or as little about this as you want or feel comfortable, but what was the beginning of your career like? What was 16 to 20-year-old Athan involved with?
Yeah, it's funny because it's funny to use that age gap, 16 to 20, because they couldn't be more polar opposite, really. From like 16 to, we'll call it 17 and a half, when I entered military service. Honestly, I was not a good person. I was involved in criminal activity. I was hanging out with people that I shouldn't be hanging out with, who were doing things that they shouldn't be doing. I was kind of a product of my childhood was real rough, and I was trying to deal with how do you navigate life with the circumstances that I was living in. And then I accidentally ended up in the Army. It wasn't like a choice or anything like that. One of the ways that I was making money at the time, I was homeless at the time. I was living in the back of my truck, and one of the things that I did to make some money was I was basically Uber before there was an Uber. I would give people rides to places, and this kid I knew from high school needed a ride to the Army recruiter, so he gave me like $5 to put gas in my truck, and I was just sitting out there in the parking lot, and all of a sudden this recruiter comes walking out and ask me what I'm doing with my life. That's a common story. So I ended up in the Army, and it changed my life completely. So that's what had really the catalyst for who I am today. I'm so grateful for that experience because I had never been successful at anything in my entire life up to that point. I even though I played sports, I pretty much got kicked off almost every team that I was ever on. I was a discipline problem. I had a lot of character issues. And I ended up in the military, and they saw my potential. It was, one, a chance to start over. And two, they saw my potential. I started to be good at things. They saw what I was capable of, and I had these amazing leaders. I ended up in Ranger Regiment, and these amazing leaders who just wouldn't accept anything but my highest level. They just would not accept anything that was substandard than what I was capable of. So from that, like 17 and a half to 20-year range, I was just kind of like finding myself. I was still struggling with who I used to be, but I was learning new things at a quantum leaps, and experiencing new levels of confidence. So that's where this all came from. I learned that I could perform physically at a high level. I learned that I had leadership abilities that I never knew I had. I learned how to be disciplined and all of that. And that has been the initiation of everything that has happened subsequent to that, any success that I've ever had.
At the time, did you know what you were getting yourself into? I'm sure like the physicality of it and, all the specifics, you probably had no idea what you were getting into in a sense, but did you sort of go into it with that mindset of like, this is an opportunity for me to turn things around? Or is that something that you kind of just fell into?
Yeah, no, I wish that I was more strategic. Like, I didn't join out of patriotism. I really didn't even understand what I was getting myself into. I tested really well on the ASVAB, the military entrance exam. So I had all these options for jobs, but the only one that actually sounded fun to me was jumping out of airplane, being like an airborne infantryman. And I mean, the recruiter who recruited me was an airborne infantryman, so he kind of sold it to me. I didn't really know what I was really getting into. So yeah, no, it just kind of, I stumbled into all of it, and it happened beautifully. I don't know if I could have planned it better than it kind of ended up.
Yeah, I think that I've been giving a lot of thought to this. Underneath all that seems like the idea of like, sometimes we do quote unquote good things, but the intention behind them is not so great. So a good example of this is a common thing that people do who are addicted to drugs and eventually become sober is a thing people say is they replace that addiction with something else. So a typical transformation of an individual like this would be drug addict to like super fit, freaky athletic individual, right? And so obviously this is a pretty great thing, right? But when it comes down to it, we're looking at this thing of, if I told you this person is addicted to exercise, in your head, you'd probably be like, oh, that's probably not a great thing, right? But I guess I just don't know where I stand on that. But your comment made me think of it in this way of maybe you wanted to jump out of airplanes because it sounded cool and like the right fun thing to do, right? But it ended up being a catalyst for inherently very good things over time. And I think obviously there's probably a bit of perspective on that now. And so some of the intentionality has changed, but I'm curious if you give any thought to that sort of idea in general.
Yeah, I mean, our intention is extremely. I mean, that's everything, right? Like, I think you can accidentally do something good, like you said, but you had bad intentions, or you can actually have been trying to do something, negative. You could have been trying to do something negative and something good comes out of it. But I really think that, your show is called Good People. And I think part of being a good person is having intentions that where the outcome of your actions is meant to be something positive, is meant to contribute to something or someone, outside of yourself. And so yeah, I think about those ideas all the time about, how people end up where they're at, what they were intended to do. You mentioned addictions. After I got out of the Army, I have a master's degree in social work, is one of my degrees. And I did work in the field of addictions, and I saw that all the time. People replacing their addiction with something else. Sometimes it's a relationship. They fall in love with somebody. Sometimes it's fitness. Sometimes it's spirituality. But even in that case, it actually, they're still it's just another drug. and they're not doing it for the right reasons, and they're not, you know what I mean? And so you have to really help
Yeah.
people along with that.
I think that I've gone through that too. One of the things that I think I have a good skill at, right? I'm only 23 years old. Okay. I think that I can see where things are going a bit better than most people. Like, I don't need to take myself to rock bottom to make a change. And that's just and this is a great example of it. I would say that I nowhere near got to like 7% body fat shredded fitness guy that realized I was completely obsessed with myself and this image of myself before I realized that I just replaced one addiction with another. I grew up, I was a bit overweight my whole life. I played a lot of video games. I just spent a lot of time on quote unquote unhealthy habits. And I lost a whole bunch of weight towards the end of high school when I started really getting into sports. And I've actually just recently came to this realization over maybe the last like 6 months, really since I did my 100 miler last September, is that after my 100 miler, I told myself that I was going to start taking jujitsu training really seriously. And then I did that for a couple months. I was going like 4 or 5 days a week. I was traveling once a week, like an hour each direction to get an extra training session in. And it got to the point where I was like so burnt out on it and I didn't know why. And I realized that like I had gotten to a point previously where I was just doing all the stuff that I was doing because I knew I liked to do it. And when I started putting pressure on myself to do well and to try to compete and all these other things, it became less fun for me. And so by no means have I had like a crazy, I did years and years of hard jujitsu training before I realized I didn't enjoy it as much anymore. Or a good example of this is my fitness, right? I never got to this insane fitness shape, but I could see myself going down that path, and looking at the intentionality of the things that I was doing has been very helpful in terms of figuring out what I actually want to spend my time doing. And I'm totally okay with going to jujitsu twice a week, which is not that much if you talk to anybody who does jujitsu. I'm
Yeah.
totally okay with working out 30 minutes a day, which is not that much compared to an individual who trains really, really hard.
Yeah, and I think that's really, and it's great that you have that skill, because I don't think a lot of people are able to play the tape all the way to the end, like in their mind, without actually living it. Um, Having the intellectual ability to be like, if I do this, then this might happen, and then if I do this, then this might happen, and be able to really do that, like 5 to 10 steps ahead is challenging for a lot of people, and a lot of people just don't take the time to do that. Which I've been that person. I kind of consider myself. I think the reason why I've been successful in business and stuff like that too is because I don't do that, right? Like, I'll have an idea and it might be crazy and it might be really hard and it might really take something from me to be able to do it. But I kind of like that process. I pride myself on being somebody who doesn't need to fully know how to do something. Before I initiate it. I think a lot of people get stuck at the thinking part. They're just afraid to take the action. So I guess it goes both ways.
Yeah, I was just about to say sometimes I feel like it comes at I was literally about to say sometimes I feel like I get to where it's a negative thing, right? Like, um, I all highly successful people have that time in their life where they just get so obsessed with something that it like consumes them completely. And I'm never going to be like that. I don't. Number one, I don't have the tenacity or the grit, I think, to withstand that sort of pressure for that long period of time. But like I said, that ability, I feel like for me to be okay, if I keep doing this, it's going to lead to this, which could lead to this, which could lead to this, and that's not what I want. Like, this is a stupid thing to say, but that ability to see and find balance, I feel like, well, is this podcast going to do well? Am I going to have a very successful career? I don't know. I think yes, but I don't know. It's a thing that I give some thought to sometimes.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is because there's infinite possibilities, right? And no, I don't care how smart you are. You're very intelligent, But no matter how intelligent you are, you really can't consider, because there's all these variables and factors that have to line up just perfectly for whatever thought you said. Oh, and then this will happen. Well, for that thing to happen, all these infinite numbers of variables kind of have to coincide at the same time. And so you can really get caught up in it is a little bit of level of arrogance, I would say, to think that you can predict the future, because we know human beings are horrible predictors of the future. So it can go both ways. You keep yourself out of trouble, yes, but are you also keeping yourself out of a success too? You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, I hear you 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Were there any major focuses for you between your military career and your, I guess, is your military career still going on technically?
Yeah. I'm still in the service. I've been in the National Guard for quite some time now. It looks very different than it was when I was active duty. So yeah, I'm still going. I think I've got 22 or 23 years of total service now.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, thank you.
Of
Um,
course.
the question I guess off of that was there any different, or sorry, was there anything else that you were focusing on outside of the fitness realm between active duty and currently what you're doing?
Yeah, a lot of different things. I was kind of lost there for a while. Military was my entire life, and then I chose not to do that anymore. And so then it became this journey of, well, who am I, and what do I want to do? And I bounced through a lot of different ideas, and I tried out a lot of things. I originally thought I was going to medical school. My bachelor's degree is in biology, and I was going to medical school. So I did medical things. I was an EMT while I was working my way through college. Um, Everything was kind of around that. And then when I decided not to go to medical school, I was trying to evaluate, well, what is it about being a doctor that I really wanted? And I thought, well, I really just want to help people. I just want to be of service to other people. And so I took a job at, as I mentioned, an addictions facility. And I started kind of seeing like what types of workers do that type of work. And there was a social worker there who I started talking to, and they're like, well, you can do all these different things with a social work degree. So then I started pursuing social work, and I fell in love with working with juveniles like myself, kids who really had a rough start in life, who were really struggling at in your adolescent years. And I started doing a lot of work in the juvenile justice system. As a social worker, I actually I created the first of its kind, into my knowledge. I don't know if anyone ever has been started, but I partnered with a criminal defense attorney who worked with juveniles. And I said, hey, what if we together you created this law model and I helped you with it, that when you represented a kid, a teenager, that your model was that they never entered the justice system ever again after you represented them. And so my job was to figure out, well, what was it that was causing their issues? Why did they break the law? And because there's always some causal factor for that. And I started, that was kind of like a career that I was pursuing, but it turns out that attorneys can't really make a lot of money doing that type of work, unfortunately. And so I needed to move on from it. And as a part-time gig, that's when I started doing the fitness thing. I love fitness. I knew what it was doing for me. I was helping the juveniles that I was working with their fitness, because as I already mentioned on this show, I believe that you're going to perform, you're going to make better decisions, you're going to think better. Everything is going to be better when you're physically fit. And so I was helping these kids do that. So I started this little boot camp, this free boot camp that I was helping kids and anyone who wanted to kind of join in on it. And that's where I really fell in love with this. This was back in, I guess, 2010 or 2011. Then I started putting this like Army boot out where people could donate money for this boot camp. And long story short, it got so big that I ended up having to do brick and mortar. And then it was just kind of like, it just has kept evolving since then. But that's how I landed in the fitness industry. There's a couple steps before that, but really that's the story.
Yeah, very cool. I think there's something to, like, I would imagine you've probably given thought to this, that's the work that you got involved in because you had a hard time coming up, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I love working with teenage boy population who aren't super athletic, because that's the kid that I was. And like, I
Yep.
wish I had me when I was 15, 14 years old, to teach me how to get in shape and like cut out all the BS stuff that I was doing, and actually give me like effective workout programs that were going to move the needle forward and give me a love and relationship with fitness and exercise that would last the rest of my life. But I just didn't have that. And so, I hear that all the time. I am the person that I wish that I had when I was younger.
Yeah.
This podcast, I do it because this is the podcast I want to listen to.
Yes. Yeah, and I think that's huge. And because I was thinking that earlier while you were talking, that you were saying, like, you said something along the lines, you didn't know if you had the tenacity to see something like really hard through or something like that. But that's not true. It's, you will go to the ends you will scorch the earth when you realize that it's your purpose, that it's your place in life. And doing the hard thing you won't even blink twice. You won't even think twice about it, because you realize this is why I am here. And I hope all people find that, because then so many infinite amounts of amazing things will come out of that, and so, like, yeah.
Yeah, is that so? Everybody's is different, right? But I have this framework that I'll quickly try to explain for fulfillment. There's 4 steps to it. And these 4 steps are a list of priorities for what I need to prioritize in my life in order to find fulfillment, find purpose, etc. Number 1 on that list is I call it peace, right? It's faith for some other individuals, but peace is what I call it. Family, so like friends and family, is second. Work is third, and then hobbies are fourth. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think most people, especially in our American society, it's in this order. It's family, work, hobbies, and then peace or faith, etc. And I think that that's a big issue in terms of a good example of this is when people are in a relationship and they break up with somebody, they say that thing of like, I need to find myself first before I get involved in another relationship. I think this is what they're talking about, right? I don't know what that piece is exactly, and I can't really articulate it. And I've been thinking about this for like the last year, but there's some aspect to it of wonder, of killing your own ego, of humbling yourself, but of also finding value in yourself as you are, of seeing yourself for and accepting yourself for who you are at this moment, not the things that you want to accomplish. Like you said earlier, along those lines, I'm not my fitness. I'm not the way that I communicate. I am not the things that I've said to people in the past that I regret. I'm me. And that's to me what peace is. It's kind of like this all-encompassing self. Again, I don't really even know exactly how to articulate it or what exactly to say, but that's priority number 1. I don't even remember how we got on this conversation.
We were talking about purpose and like how like, I
Oh,
guess based
yes.
how yeah.
Yeah. So for me, right, if all of those 4 steps are good, our boxes are checked, I feel like I am on track to my purpose, right? It's not a singular thing for me. And again, I've never really articulated it before, so I guess I'm talking my way there. But if you ask me what my purpose is, it's going to change every single day. I want to help people. That's something that a lot of people say. That's something that I feel like and I believe. I want to be a good, kind individual. I want people to remember me for that I was kind and I gave and I was fun and I was carefree, etc. Right? And so if I don't have those 4 things in line, I feel like I'm way off track. I'm not in line with that purpose or passion, etc. Do you have any sort of framework that you use for that, or is your purpose more singularly focused on one specific statement, phrase, or thing?
No, I have mine's a little different than yours, but as you were speaking, like, some things that came to my mind, like really 2 things that I've learned over time that came to my mind. Well, one, so there's a book that was intended to be a financial book for small business owners called Profit First, which you might have heard of. But I don't care about money. I don't really care about anything. So when I think about my profits, I think about, well, if I had all the money in the world, everything for me was taken care of, how would I live my days? Like, what would my days look like? And it sounded a lot like what you were speaking about. I would feel free. I would feel free to make whatever decisions I wanted to make. I would feel at peace. I would feel like I was pursuing who I really am as a person. So that's kind of like my profit. And I take that first, right? So everything that I feel like is good for me and it's like fulfills my soul, I make those decisions first before I do anything else, right? Before I worry about anyone else, before I do anything work related, I make sure I'm taking care of my profits first. Um, So that's like a big part of it. Also, I don't know. I read in a book, I think it was Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, but I might be quoting this one wrong. But I also think about what something you said is at the end of my life, when people are gathered around my deathbed, what do I want people to be saying about me? What is the impact that I want to have made on people? What is going to be? I don't like to think about legacy either, but I like, how are people going to remember me? And I start there. So I start with the end in mind. I try to act today like I'm like how I want people to remember me when I die. Because the truth is, I could get hit by a car right now. Something crazy and horrible could happen to me, and how do I want people to think about me in that instance? Along with all that, my framework is everything that I do, and basically how I filter all my decisions and everything. I feel like I have a 3-part purpose: optimal health, deep human connection, and self-actualization. And that means for all people in my life and for myself, that's a two-way. All three of those things are a two-way street. So I'm kind of filtering all of my decisions, everything I do. If I'm going to get involved in a business, if I'm going to do anything, it runs through that kind of filter. All those, I would say, 5 filters.
Okay, meaning like you need to prioritize these 3 things for yourself, and you also are helping others do the same.
Exactly.
Cool. Let's go through each one of those. What's optimal health to you?
Yeah, optimal health is one where people kind of like tend to challenge me on that one, and really, it's not what people think it is. Like, don't confuse that with elite health or elite fitness. Optimal in my mind, and I mean, you and I maybe even had this conversation when we were having dinner or something. I think maybe it was you, but regardless, optimal is a hard word, right? And there's like all this discourse right now about optimization. You got the Huberman Lab and all these different things, and that's really not what I'm talking about. For me, optimal health means I want to have my body and my mind and my being in tune, so that I can do all these amazing things in my life. And that's really all that means. Whatever, so if I'm going to be an artist, for example, if I'm going to be a painter, what does my health need to look like so that I can be the best painter that I can possibly be? I'm not talking about lifting big weights or running fast miles or anything elite like that.
Yeah. It's having a coffee and a croissant when you wake up to inspire your muse.
Yeah, for sure. Because for some people, that's the right choice.
Yeah. I think that's cool. That's a cool take on optimal. I do think I remember having this conversation with you that like a good phrase or example that I give people is optimal for individual 1 might be saying no to eating the slice of pizza because they really struggle with discipline and they need to work on it. Optimal for person 2 could be saying yes to pizza because they're very restrictive with their diet. They're obsessed with their body and they need to get over that.
Right. And that's and another part of that. I mean, we'll chase that one down a little bit. If you're not optimal if you're overweight. Like, we don't want to talk about how people look, right? I don't care about how you look, but if you're carrying a lot of excess body weight and things like that, your body's just not functionally near what it could be. So that's part of that decision making, right? It's the discipline. Yes, a lot of us struggle with the discipline, but also it's, as I mentioned, if this were a guitar, I want to make sure all the strings are tuned appropriately so it makes beautiful music. And that's how I think about your body. I can't have a string that's out of tune,
Exactly. You need to set yourself up for the lifestyle that you are meant to live. I think that using the word meant there, whether you believe in a higher power or whatever, it doesn't matter. Like there's a capability that we all have as human beings, and it's not necessarily your responsibility to live up to that capability, but to just throw this opportunity away. I think that we both agree on this is kind of I don't want to use the word wrong, but in my eyes, it's a messed up thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I think my worst fear, and this is like my own insecurity and things, it's just like not living up to my potential. And like all the people I love in my life, I worry about that for them too. You are capable of amazing things, and we don't even know what those amazing things are, but I want to see it. And so I want you to be doing the things to help you. And I don't know we don't know what our potential really is. And, but yeah, like you mentioned, it would be a shame to waste this opportunity.
Yeah, I definitely do a lot of the stuff that I do. I definitely do it for others in my life, my girlfriend, my parents. If it was just me in a vacuum, I wouldn't run an ultra marathon probably. Like there's definitely a lot of external things that motivate me to become more because I feel like I owe it to others. Like I feel this need to, I'm responsible for, with jujitsu specifically. Okay. And this wasn't a motivation for me starting jujitsu, but since I've done jujitsu for 3 years and I've gotten okay at it, like now that I have this skill and ability to protect myself, can I also protect others? The likelihood of me getting into a situation where I'll have to do that is very low. And I hear people say things like I just said sometimes on podcasts, and I kind of laugh at them because it's like it's just a funny thing sometimes to say. If like I need to protect everybody. That's true, but because I'm capable of it, I feel like it's more pressure. I now need to be aware that this is a thing that I should be doing if the opportunity presents itself.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that people often jump to worst case scenarios and they start, you can go that direction really quickly. But, jujitsu is a perfect example of there's so many things that jujitsu provides beyond the self-defense piece, right? It provides a level of confidence when you kind of walk around the world and you've eliminated one fear of a possibility that, if someone jumped on your back right now, you would know exactly what to do. And so now you've just kind of knocked off something that you're worried about. But it's also just the process of learning to do something that's really hard, like figuring out a Rubik's Cube. It's that difficult,
I can solve a Rubik's Cube.
I cannot.
If you have one unsolved, let me know, dude. Ship it in the mail.
I'll mail it to you.
Yeah. Dude, it's funny you said that. And this is just like a funny joke. I don't necessarily have a point here, but when you said like it gives you the confidence, right? I was describing to somebody this morning while I was training them, one of the benefits of jujitsu. And I was like, if you just all of a sudden punched me in the face and caught a double leg and drove me through the wall and we ended up in the other building, I would be totally fine with it. Like,
yeah.
I'd be like, I've done this before. I'm good to go.
Yeah, it's a level of being. We talk about this a lot. Like, I love Michael Easter's book, The Comfort Crisis, and it's just like literally being comfortable, knowing that you're going to be okay. I think that's what it really comes down to. No matter what happens, I'm going to be okay. I feel very fortunate that my life, I've lived through some really hard things, and I stand here today as a person who's so grateful for that, because you can't hit me with anything right now that I don't feel like I'm going to be able to survive.
This is a lunatic thing for me to say and think, but it's like, for anybody listening, I'm not a lunatic. This is just one of those like prefrontal cortex blocker things that I shouldn't say out loud, but I'm going to say. I think about futures all the time where like, there's this show a couple years ago that came out called Revolution. I didn't watch it, but the premise was, for whatever reason, all electronics just shut down. Like people on the highway, the cars stopped. Everything in the world the lights turned off. Satellites didn't work. I couldn't text everything. We were in the olden times, right? And then it follows these characters through like the years where they're like riding horses and they all live in log cabins and tribes. And I think about futures like that all the time. And now I'm in a point in my life where I'm like, I'd be fine. Like, I don't know if I have all the skills necessary, but I feel confident in myself that we would be all right.
Yeah, you figure it out. That's what it really comes down to.
That's a very low. Yeah, very low percentage chance of something like that happening, but it's good that I feel confident I can handle it.
Yeah, well, I guess it depends on who you ask if it's a low percentage or not. There's all the doomsday, what do they call them, preppers, and then you've got the people that there's that TV show, and I've watched an episode or so, but like Ancient Civilizations or something like that, where basically they believe there was like basically advanced civilizations a long time ago. They got wiped out and we started over, just like how you basically described in this TV show.
Yeah, dude. I followed that rabbit hole a handful of times, and it's a very interesting concept.
Yeah. Well,
so if we could sum up your optimal health, it's to be prepared for an apocalyptic event. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, you nailed it pretty much.
Cool. I like it. It's a very individual thing. Let's go deep connection. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, we kind of touched on that a little bit. Like, I don't believe that we're here for ourselves. Again, no matter what your spiritual belief is or a higher power or anything like that, in ISO, like we would live our lives would look very different if it was just us like on an island in the middle of nowhere. And so for me, the real bounty in life, the real treasure, the thing that you lose sleep that I lose sleep over, or that I might be worried about at the end of my life, is really like my relationships with people. And so for me, and I think what really provides the most assets in life, the biggest leg up, any advantage that you really want to receive in life is often going to come through your network, through your relationships, through your connection to other human beings. And so to me, that's massively important. And I think about it all the time. One of the things I love about owning a gym is the ability to create community, a healthy group of people who have similar beliefs in being well and being healthy, and who all come together to help each other with that. It's my biggest joy of all of it. I mean, I I measure my success off of that, you know, quotient, however you might measure that, more than I would what my bank account says or how many members I have at my gym or anything like that. Is what do our connections look like? So
Exactly.
that's really what that's about.
I just had a conversation with a friend of mine. He owns a boxing gym, apparel company. His name's Jack. He lives in Chicago. We were talking about that, where objectively speaking, he doesn't have a whole bunch of money, but if you asked him where he wanted to be a year ago, it was owner of a gym, running a beautiful relationship with his girlfriend, etc. And he's like, I'm doing all those things, and like I might not be where I want to, but it's important to acknowledge that like the things that we value in terms of what we want to accomplish, like having a beautiful relationship with your significant other or connecting with your members at the gym, you don't have to wait for that stuff. You can have it right now, and you probably do have it right now. You just need to be aware of it.
Right. You need to see it and know that if you had all the money in the world, this is what you would be doing with that money. You'd want to spend your time with people that you love. You'd want to, that's what it's really all about. It's not going to be about the things that you have, you know?
Yeah, yeah, 100%. The question that I have off of this is deep connection. Is this something that is just for others? And this might be my question is there a deep connection that you seek within yourself? And that might be self-actualization, your third pillar. And if it is, we can just start talking about that. But is there an element of deep connection?
Yeah, it's 100% different. And I know this is going to be a little bit of my weirdo view, I guess, of my a self, who I am in myself. But yeah, these three pillars really are for myself and others. So having a deep connection with myself is paramount to everything else. And so it has to be there. Like knowing we build up, we create little, I'll call them little people inside of ourselves, little characters. As we have an incident happen to us in our life, we kind of create a behavior that adapts, that basically makes it so that you won't have to experience something negative again in your life. And so if you're not like getting to know yourself, if you're not looking inward, even your DNA, if you think about it, it's just all these little micro pieces of all these other ancestors that you've had in your entire life. And so you've got all these people inside of you, basically. And it's very complex and it's very difficult. As we know, it's hard to live. It's hard to be a human being. And so if you're not kind of exploring yourself, getting to know yourself, being aware, like you mentioned, you're not going to be as effective as you possibly can. You're not going to enjoy life as much as you possibly can if you're not aware of who you are. So yeah, it definitely starts inward, and then deep connection outward. Really, I went through a phase of my life where I was really guarded and untrusting because of what I'd gone through in my life. Like I had really, really had a hard time connecting with other people. And so the word deep connection is different than like I had a lot of friends. I was very likable. If you asked anyone, I was a social butterfly. On the surface, it looked like I had relationships, but actually I was very lonely. And actually I didn't really have anyone that I could trust, or I could, I didn't really feel like I had a best friend. People say that's my best friend. I didn't feel like I had that. And I think that really comes from vulnerability. That comes from killing the ego, as you mentioned. There's a lot of things that have to happen to get. So the word deep is important in that phrase. I could have said real relationships or real
Yeah.
connections.
This conversation is actually very helpful for me, and I think in articulating that. I think deep connection to you is peace to me. Like you said that the selves thing, I don't think that's weird at all. And I'll give a good example for anybody listening. Like, what what is your reaction when you go visit your hometown? And maybe it's not the case for everybody, but this is a perfect example for me. My girlfriend, when we think about like family planning, whatever in the future, she wants to move back to my hometown. And the thought of that terrifies me. When I'm in my hometown, especially when I go out to like Walmart in my hometown, I'm like, man, what if I run into somebody who I went to high school with when I was like this shelled up, nervous, overweight guy, not confident in myself? Like I go back to that guy and I hate that guy. I don't hate him. I just, I don't like who I am when I'm that guy. And
Yeah.
so this is a good example. Sometimes places or things can bring out more parts of you that maybe you haven't given any thought to in a long time. And so to me, this is a great way to articulate what I mean by peace. It's an understanding of yourself. I think that another skill that I have is I think that I exist like in my head, where I said I'm very cerebral, right? I exist in my head and I'm very good at observing the meat suit of me, right? I'm very good at figuring out what the meat suit does. I have all of the same like, oh, there's a very attractive person impulses, or oh, I don't really feel like working out, I'm not going to work out, or sometimes I go back to being I feel like I'm a different guy when I'm at the Walmart in my hometown, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really good at noticing when those things happen. And that doesn't mean that I can pull myself out of it, but it's just funny. Like, I think for me, the piece is being in tune with that little guy inside my head that is observant of what my body's doing, how I'm reacting to my environment physiologically, how some of the mental pathways in my brain, how I follow those at certain aspects of my life. But I think deep connection for you is what peace is for me.
Yeah, I love that perspective that you have on it too, because you do find peace when you're aware. The awareness is like when you just mentioned like, oh, if something bubbles up inside of you, you start to feel this like feeling. If you have the awareness to say like, oh, that's teenage me feeling this feeling, then you can be like, okay, well, I can just let this be. I can let this happen, and I'm at peace with it. I can be with it, and I think and it's really important. A lot of people don't have that. I read a book. I've read it multiple times now. Awareness. Actually, I listened to it on Audible. Awareness by Anthony DeMello talks a lot about this, and it's amazing. It's taught me a lot, and it's exactly what you're saying. It's your version of peace.
Cool. I haven't read that, but I'm definitely going to check it out. I even like, there's evening Joel and there's morning Joel. Morning Joel is disciplined and he like is ready to go.
Yeah.
Dude, when I'm in the evening, I don't want to go to jujitsu. I don't want to do anything. I want to just lay on the couch and watch Netflix.
Yeah.
And so literally the conversation, this might be a lunatic thing in my head and I don't always go to jujitsu when I don't feel like it, but a lot of times, especially when I do, the conversation is literally like, I need to act how I act in the morning. Like,
Yeah.
be morning Joel right now and just go.
Yeah. And I think that's part of it. Or, I think there's a lot where you can say, you can not be that one character. Or if you know yourself well enough, you can be like, look, I know I don't have motivation in the evening, so I need to make sure I'm loading my mornings. There's a lot of different ways to navigate that, if you're aware of it.
Yeah. Know yourself. Beware.
Yep. Yep.
What's self-actualization? How are those things different?
Yeah, it's that potential thing, right? Like it's a two-part thing for me. It's one, self-actualization, like the self, who myself is, being completely comfortable and feeling free to be who I really am, to think how I really think, to say what I really mean, to when I'm stripping away the ego, when I'm stripping away all the habits and the behaviors that I've guarded myself with over the years just to survive and just to get myself through social situations and whatever else, everything that's underneath that, who am I? And can I bring that more and more and more to the surface? Is it possible for me to be that way all the time? No masks, no different ways of being, regardless of who I'm around. It's that piece, right? And then it's also the, whether we like it or not, we are somewhat predetermined in like, I'm going to be skilled at certain things. My genetics, my DNA, the culture that I grew up in comes together to have like a potential and, something that you could be really, really good at X. And that's part of it too. So it's kind of a two-part deal.
Gotcha. I think just like talking to you, the three pillars, if you could have like a slogan, it should be real. Like
Yeah.
optimal health is being honest with yourself and figuring out what it is that you need to do based off of the things that you want and need, and figuring out what optimal is for that. Deep connection is being real with yourself and others in terms of your place in the world, becoming aware of your tendencies and yourself and connecting with others. And the only way to do that is to be honest and be real with them. And self-actualization is a little bit more on that, like be real with yourself, catch yourself when you're, dude, I caught myself the other day. I don't even remember the specific scenario, so I might sound crazy when I say this, but I told somebody something that wasn't even true. It was just
Yeah.
like, oh, this is easier if this is easier if I just tell them, if I just tell them that if I say this and I don't have to go into all detail about all the other stuff, right?
Yeah.
And that's such a stupid thing to do, and I hate that I did that, and I caught myself doing that, and that's a good example of self-actualization.
Yeah.
I need to do better in scenarios like that.
Being comfortable, just saying the truth, or saying how you feel, or saying whatever, or even in your scenario, just saying like, "Hey, I don't really want to. I don't really want to like explain this to you," and just being okay
Yeah.
giving them that answer. If and the key character piece of it though is that I want to be that for me, but I also want to bring that out of other people. So all those things that we just described, I want to be the kind of person who makes it safe, comfortable, and allowable for them to do all those things also in my presence and in the presence of other people. That's super important for me.
I couldn't agree more on that. Accessibility is the word that I use. Um, that's actually one of the core values we use at our gym is making fitness accessible. That's like one of the things that I really believe in. And I choose to use the word accessible over inclusive because I feel like inclusive has the ability to be exclusive, but connecting, just like fitness, it's not reserved for specific people. It's for anybody. But people, you can make it inaccessible because of your skills or your personality. And I think one of the aspects of being a good individual is making connection accessible, making your information accessible, helping others, things like that.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's hard to do that for all people because what we mentioned already is just that's the real challenge. You're going to connect with different types of people and you're not going to connect with other types of people, you know?
Yeah. I know we're running a bit short on time here.
Yeah.
Last question. I think you actually said this at some point in this podcast already where you said, I think being a good person is X, but what does it mean to you, maybe a bit more specifically, and maybe now that we've talked about some other things, to be a good person?
Yeah, I mean, knowing that this was the title of your podcast and everything, I thought about that, and that's really hard to describe. And you were talking about something earlier when you were trying to articulate peace, and it's like it's hard for me to say what, or another way to say that is like what is love, right? It's hard to say what it is. It's easy to say what it's not. Right. And I think about that. You don't necessarily know when you meet a good person, but you know when you meet someone who you don't think is being a good person. It's so easy to identify it. So yeah, it goes back to kind of like at the end of the day, being a good person is really just, I feel like I have an obligation as someone who is recovering in a couple of different ways. I'm recovering from a really difficult childhood. I'm recovering as a result of that from being a people pleaser, being what I thought everybody else wanted me to be. And I would do anything to overcome that. Where I'm at now is trying to be a good person is, just, I want to make sure that when people are around me, no matter what, they feel safe and comfortable being who they are, knowing that they're accepted and appreciated no matter what they're going on or even how they're acting in that moment, whatever they're demonstrating. We all have our moments, our blow ups, our slips, you know, things that we're not necessarily proud of. If I'm being a good person, I want to be the type of person who says, hey, it's okay. I understand you. You're seen. You're accepted. I kind of understand what's going on with you right now, and I'm here for you no matter what. That's really hard to do. I think it's hard to be a good person, because being a good person means making the harder good choice. You know, someone's being an asshole and treating someone else poorly. It's really hard to be the good person who says, hey man, come here, let me give you a hug. Or, hey man, let me talk you through this, other than just lashing back out or reacting or giving back to them exactly what they're putting into the world. So that's really my definition of it, is kind of being that stable, strong, value-based person at all times. Although I don't think you're a bad person if you're not a not good person if you aren't able to do it all the time, you know?
Yeah. 100%. And that's the biggest thing that I've learned so far with this question is I don't know how long I'm going to be able to continue to ask people this question, but it's so many things, right? And
yeah.
Like you said, it's easy to say, okay, well, I know that this is not a good person. And so, I mean, I really appreciate that answer. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for saying that. But
of course, yeah.
We'll wrap it up there, dude. You got anything else you want to add?
No, man, I'm so glad to have this time with you. I love what you're doing on the show. And I hope that, how many episodes do you have now?
This will be episode 11.
11. Okay. So you're almost to that. What is it? 26? You told me this stat.
Yeah. 22 on the 22nd episode will be in the top 1% of amount of episodes in a podcast.
I love it. Well, you're doing great work. I've been loving listening to the show, and I'm just honored that you've had me on.
Thank you, man. I'm very grateful to have this conversation with you. We'll definitely do it again sometime, whenever. You're welcome to do this anytime. This is an awesome conversation. This is probably one of my favorites that I've had.
We'll catch up soon.
All right, man. Appreciate you.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Thank you guys so much for listening to this week's episode of Good People. Make sure you check the show notes so you can see all of the projects that Athan has going on. If you are watching on YouTube, please leave us a like, comment, and subscribe, and turn on post notifications so you never miss an episode. And if you're feeling very super special, please share the episode with someone that you love, perhaps your grandma. We'll see you next time.